Hi, my name is Lamarcus Harvey. I'm a VFX character modeler. And today I would like to show you a few of my basic steps on how I create characters using Photoshop and jump into zBrush. So here you can see we're in Photoshop, and I'm just quickly trying to get ideas out of my mind and on paper. Just like rough ideas, shapes and forms that I was thinking could be cool. Not necessarily anything set in stone yet, just quick sketches and ideas. And yeah, I would do this probably several times, and right now we're jumping into Z-spheres. So we've exited Photoshop and jumped into ZBrush. This process is usually what I do to quickly block in a character from scratch, because the end result from using this gives you like good base topology. It's not like perfect, but it's like good enough to where you can manipulate smoothly. I'll move those spheres around, and then you convert it and it becomes a quadded mesh. And then that geometry is like much more simple to work with. You always want to work low to high. So if you have a Dynamesh character and he's like several million polygons, like typically posing and moving things around is a little harder. So I like to start pretty low and work my way up to the details. And I find Z-spheres is like one of the best ways to start with that very quickly. Oh, I've jumped into the head here and making some eyeballs using Z-modeler. It's a very low poly beginning. Like I said, you typically should work from low to high to get good mesh control. Yeah, now I've started sculpting the head and reposing things. Use some of the basic ZBrush brushes, like nothing fancy, like clay buildup and standard and damp standard is pretty much all you need for the most part. And yeah, start blocking in preliminary forms. So at this point, I would duplicate the base mesh that was created from the Z-spheres and change the topology a little bit to extrude the shell shape of this character. This character is actually, it's a bug creature based off of a Pokemon character named Heracross. I had just been playing Pokemon right before starting this, and I thought it'd be really fun to try to make them a little bit more realistic, kind of badass, and a little creepy, just plus him up a bit. He's more more like aggro fighting Pokemon now. Creatures is my main passion. Yeah, I love a juicy dragon, something that is big and full of details, like a giant trolls, and yeah, I'm all into it. A lot of mythology, and I grew up trying to figure out a lot of that. I used to be terribly afraid of creatures and stuff as a kid, but then I learned a lot more about them and was like, oh man, this is just stuff people's making. you know, like Rick Baker making the Wolfman. It was like, to me, that was real growing up in my mind. And it was like, no, that's just made by a dude. I've always been artistic, so it just kind of just went tenfold and stumbled across like some sculpting and yeah, started trying it myself. Didn't think anything of it for the most part. And now here we are. Yeah, here I've established a lot of the outside armor, at least the block in for its basic shape. And I've given it like some exterior thorns and like fingernails to go along with the armor. And yeah, this is still just like the preliminary block and using a lot of Z-modeler to build these shapes. They're all pretty much extruded from the base topology that I've established through the Z-spheres. So the Z-spheres can really take you a long way if you like have it set up properly. Yeah, like decent geo from the jump. It makes it a lot easier to build out your forms quickly. And then it's all about silhouette and changing the shape. So what I'm doing here. You always want to have a good silhouette and base before you start polishing and doing wrinkles and, you know, crevices and stuff like that. Once I have a sense of its like basic form taking shape and I can feel the direction that I want to go into. So it's like I'm constantly thinking about how this creature, I have a base idea of what it is. It's some kind of bug. It's like obviously a herbivore of some kind, and what would it be doing and how big is it and where would it be? That's how like the initial thought process starts. And then just become the creature. And it's like, all right, now that I have how big I am and where I live, what am I doing here? When I'm walking around and it's like, oh, is it rainy? Am I like climbing trees? It's like, okay, so what features apply to that? Like what kind of creature would have developed? What features would a creature have developed to like live in this imaginary place I've placed this creature in my head? So that all takes like a lot of place. So I spend a lot of time being like a dragon when I'm sculpting a dragon, or for instance, Heracross, the Pokemon here. It's like you become the bug. And you're like in your mind, you're like making these bug clicks and sounds. Well, at least for me, it gets a little weird. I typically don't say that. So this character is built of several subtools, as you can see. I like to keep them broken up into like segments of what will have similar details added to them. So like if the scale of the chest plate and back like armor pieces, if they're all going to be uniformly textured together with some kind of texture pattern, like skin, or in this instance, like a inset bug, like pitted texture, I would like to call it. I would try to keep that brush at that size and use that for the overall chunk that I'm sculpting. And then I'll switch it up. Like the fingers will probably have smaller like cracks and crevices than a big gash on the torso. So I try to mentally keep them broken up in segments like that to help me just move quicker instead of having 1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger, 4 finger all down the subtool. Now I've gotten into making overall like subtle noise, and that's a very powerful tool in ZBrush as well, where you can like coat an object with like say a wood grain texture or skin pores, just as a like overall base. Then you can go and further refine. Yeah, so when sculpting the face, that's when the character really comes alive. So like at this point, I'm like mimicking mouth movements and like screeching at my desk as I'm like sculpting it. And yeah, it's like the fun part for me. It's like getting to the specifics of how this character is going to like be presented, because the first thing people tend to like navigate to is like the face, and yeah, it's the main focus just typically for anything. So at this point, after establishing like where I'm happy with how the face is heading and polishing up a few things here and there, I would typically call the model done here, do a quick render to check its forms with a little bit of shadow, and yeah. And I hop into Maya for UVs. Thanks for watching my initial steps for how I go about creating a character. Next steps, we will jump into Maya to do UVs and prep the character for texture.